Hello, learners, and welcome to the second part of our series on what is event management and how event management is an evolved career. So, in today's session, we're going to talk about the aspects of how event management is different from the other forms of communication, how event management is a much more evolved career in terms of role play, in terms of technique, in terms of understanding. We'll also talk about the different types of general event management scenarios which are typically encountered in an agency. And what more we will study in the lecture to follow is the various specialized roles in the event management business. So let's dive into our session and talk about the different forms of event management. And more importantly, first let's understand what is the difference in event management over other forms of communication. The business of event management and experiential marketing. Our session covers why to choose event management as a career, part two. So, what differentiates events as a career from other communication businesses? Focused communication platform. This is one of the most evolved platforms where the delivery of communication is targeted towards a specific set of people. Whereas conventional advertising, be it print, be it radio, be it television, is for a universal audience where measurement is on a one-way platform where you put up an ad in a paper and people may read or may not read it or skip it or may revert to you. However, in an event management scenario, the audience is in front of you. They are reacting to your activity or your presentation, and you're getting instant feedback. It is driven by consumer insights. So, what do consumers like? What do they prefer? What kind of things they would like to see? What kind of engagement they would like to get into? How do you reach out to them in environments where they least expect you to be there? So, the basic three forms of events or event management is intrusive, where you try and intrude into someone's life and create an experience for them. Immersive, where you get them engaged and involved into your delivery of communication and you make them dive into the storytelling that you're trying to put together. And disruptive, so it's like you go to a mall to buy a pair of clothing and suddenly you encounter a circus that is taking you on a journey and telling you about an experience which you least expected. So, storytelling in unobtrusive environments is again a part of event management and is primarily delivered and derived from consumer insights. It is driven by the marketer's need, the need to communicate, the need to engage, the need to get into the mind of the consumer and tell him about the product. So this is effectively done by understanding the marketer's need and understanding what his expectations are and therefore deriving a firm communication channel. So events need not necessarily be entertainment. Events could be education, events could be knowledge sharing, events could be uh, generating interest about a particular happening or an activity. Uh, Events could be about telling people or educating people about a certain new thing that has been evolved and thus enabling them to absorb and assimilate communication. Events are driven by passion for engaging storytelling. So it's again about a lot of people coming together to build a story into a reality. Events are multidisciplined. It's not a single form of evolution. If you look at a conventional conclave or a convention, every conference or every convention is different. Every conclave has its own way of delivering a story or delivering knowledge to their consumers. If you look at a fashion event, a pret-a-porter or a haute couture fashion show, each will have its own form of treatment. Fashion is treated differently today by different brands to engage in conversations. A Lakme Fashion Week brings across the elements of style and design, though it is for a cosmetic brand. Whereas a brand like Reliance Threads or Reliance Industries brings about a show called Harmony to talk about clothing lines and talk about fabric in the form of an art. So different brands have used fashion to tell effective stories in a different way. So while there are many genres of events, be it corporate events, be it social events, be it IPs, be it exhibitions, be it mice, be it concerts, be it product launches, sports events, and the list is endless. Each discipline has a further specialization and a further niche that has been created. Today, in the current market, digital, virtual, extended reality, AR, VR, and for that matter, even um, uh, intellectual properties have become a current trend. Retail business today is looking at engagement in a very big way to talk to its consumers and actually deliver solutions. So again, this has become a new trend that is coming under the multidisciplined business. So let's look at a classic example of the medical profession. You have a general MBBS doctor who delivers solutions for any kind of sickness or treatment that you would probably go to. But then if you have a special malady which you need addressing, then you would go to a specialist. And that is how even the event industry is evolving today, where specialists are taking over certain key markets, whether it be the IT sector, the retail sector, the pharma sector, the services industry, and delivering solutions in that business, thus building a specialization, thus building a capacity for themselves, and thus enabling themselves to focus on that industry, understand the industry's needs, and come up with winning solutions which are innovative, which are thought provoking, and which can engage their consumers or their buyers and thereby deliver objectives of the event to them. There is no fixed approach to creative deployment today in the business. So methods and means are constantly evolving. Every marketeer, every event manager is developing new solutions. हर एक आदमी एक नया क्या है मांग रहा है, and that is how the business of events is evolving. While every event has a certain fixed element like standard staging, lighting, sound, AV, technology, and so on and so forth, the methods of deploying lighting or the methods of doing a stage or the methods of using technology are constantly being challenged and changed for every single event, thus enabling event managers to actually create solutions which are custom for every single client and every single event. Um, a lot of event management today is about meticulousness. So, what differentiates events as a career from other communication business is also about being dynamic. We are constantly doing new things every single day. So today I may be doing a wedding for a large industrial house and getting into the personal good books of the family and the uncles and aunties. And the next day I would probably be doing a factory launch for the same client, talking to their workers and their stakeholders and trying to sell them the story behind the company. And on another day, I would probably using the finished goods from that factory to talk to a consumer in the marketplace and doing an activation program for him, trying to physically educate the consumer to buy into that actual product. So for a single client, from a personal interaction to a stakeholder and business interaction to an actually B2C environment where I would engage with his consumer, are three different stories that I would be telling for the same client. This kind of special skill set evolvement or this kind of business dynamism only comes in events and unlike any other business. So it's mandatory to have knowledge of the business. It's mandatory to understand the skill sets required for each genre or each discipline of the event. It's mandatory to understand the execution process, the evolvement process, the delivery mechanisms, the best practices, and how do these practices vary from markets to markets, from cultures to cultures, from societies to societies, communities to communities, countries to countries, and globally becomes an essential necessity of learning. Detailing, God is in the details. And this is something that I have learned very long ago when I started my career in events. Detailing and meticulous planning, foreseeing how things will evolve, how things could change. You know that you're in the peak of summer and it would never rain. But knowing the weather forecast on that day and knowing that how it could impact your event is an essential necessity. Forecasting for the event, not just the weather, but understanding what could go wrong with every single minute of interaction where the consumer or the visitor or the invitee would engage with the event and its stakeholders or the event marketeer is an important aspect to learn. So understanding that this is a live and there is no room for errors. Unlike any other business where a film can be re-edited, an ad can be redone, a radio commercial can be represented, a hoarding can be re-put up, events is only one take. We get only one chance to deliver a story to a consumer. If we fail, we fail. So therefore, doing the rehearsals, checking human errors, mitigating risks, reducing crisis, understanding what could go wrong, not only from your side as a planner, but also from people who are part of the process, be it artists, be it performers, be it the client himself in terms of his responsiveness, be it the visitors who would come, who would probably react differently to the experience that you're trying to put together. And understanding how to do damage control is also an important aspect. They say that event management is the sixth most riskiest business in the world after a army, a firefighter, and a pilot. And this means a lot because the risks involved in our business at every single stage of planning, production, and delivery are huge. And when we are evolving these risks, detailing and meticulous planning are the only way we can mitigate them. So whether it's pure human capital or pure human skill, remember managing people, managing their skills, using technology and building it into a fundamental requirement is a must have for being successful. Man management and risk assessment are the two pillars on the basis of which an event gets delivered. So, how does one think through this? Uh, Again, being foresighted, being agile, as we spoke earlier in the slide, are the essential solutions for an event. Understanding this as a value is far too critical in the execution of an event. Often on-site decisions or meetings are required as solutions to deliver an event. Also for a client, when you are fleet-footed, when you are agile with your solutions, it brings together a lot of confidence. Again, referring to the medical industry, if you go to a doctor and say, I have a cold, and if he's not able to tell you a solution on the spot, or if he's able to resolve your issue and tells you that, wait, I would need to diagnose and probably come back to you, it sets your confidence on a back foot, and you're always anxious to know what would be the final result. So for a client, if you're able to analyze this problem, to be able to deliver solutions, to be able to come back to him in a specific amount of time with the correct replies, which would be able to make decisions for himself and deliver the event, it becomes a mandatory. So also salvaging situational crisis at times becomes a important tool for a good event manager. So this kind of services or this kind of ability is not a predominant value that is required in any other media forms. Logical creative thinking. So creativity is not just about ideas, but creativity is also about how you put a process into place. So understanding what goes first into a venue. So example, a stage needs to be built first before you put in anything else. How much time would it take a stage to get into a venue? What would be the logistics to load up a physical stage into a venue which is probably on the fourth floor? How would you get your truck in? How would you get your people in? How would people follow safety norms to ensure that no risks are engaged in putting the stage together? How would you ensure that everything that you pick up from your warehouse is loaded onto the truck to deliver it to the venue in time, so that you can build the stage in time, so that you can start your rehearsal in time and you can execute the show in time, again becomes a part of planning. So mitigating risks from the load sheet to the ingress or the entry into the venue to actually building the stage and finally delivering it to the client is just a very small process of event making. But this requires logical, creative thinking. So while all forms of communication are sold on a plank of creativity, events are sold differently. Events focus on creative ideas that are practical. Events focus on ideas that take into account unforeseen risks. Events are built on a plank which take into account human error. Events take into account technical error and therefore plan for backups. Events take into account natural calamities and therefore plan for the worst and look at insurance for the event. Events are planned on the respondent behavior. So understanding and testing consumer insights before you actually implement a concept would save you and the client embarrassment, risks, and of course, investments in money that you would put in. Therefore, events are measurable. Events are result oriented. This kind of logical thinking does not happen in such a large way in any other form of media and communication. And that is what events are all about. So let us look at what are the career options in event management. General event management roles, business development and client service management. Most event companies have this role which basically looks after the person who would be engaged in communicating and connecting with a client. So these people actually go out into the market and talk to customers, talk to clients, understand their needs, understand their requirements, put together that understanding in the form of a written document, come back to the agency, dissect it amongst the production, creative, operations, logistic team members, and then put together a project design with a creative concept, with a logistical plan, with an operational plan, with a production detailing, and a financial plan to enable a client to make a conscious decision to work with the agency and execute an event. So this client service management business is all about taking a thought or a necessity or a need from a client, converting and putting it together in the form of an idea with the help of a team, and then going back to the client and actually putting it together in the form of a project delivery. So this is what business development does. Project management roles, however, globally today are far more evolved. So a project manager not only takes and services a client need, but he also oversees the execution in various forms to understand profitability, to understand risk assessment, to understand quality control, and even prepare a report at the end of the event to tell a client how well they fared in terms of delivering the idea, the result of the idea, and how it could evolve in further marketing and further redistribution of the client's service or product to its consumers. So project management is a more evolved role, unlike a conventional business management or client service role. Then comes the role of a creative content and design team. So a creative person in an agency basically looks after uh, ideation. So when a requirement comes from a client, he essentially looks after putting that requirement into a creative thought. This thought is then converted into a content presentation. So this could be in the form of prose, in the form of words, in the form of music, in the form of video, in the form of poetry, in the form of storytelling. And these points are then put together as a concept presentation. Content also covers aspects of script, uh, visualization. It also covers design, and it provides guidelines to designers or visualizers to actually say that there is a thought, there is an idea, and this needs to be put into a form of a physical presentation. The designer then uses tools like traditionally it was hand-drawn sketches. Now we use softwares on the computer. So there could be 3D Max, which is made by a company called Autodesk, or Coral Draw, which is made by a company called Corel.com, or Photoshop, which is made by a company called Adobe, which basically delivers cutting edge solutions to design various kinds of design solutions which can go to a customer. Today, customers are even looking at 3D walkthroughs. So you could actually see a camera walking through an event, leading you and taking you through the pre-function area, which shows you where your guests will interact with their customers, and talk to them, and then leads you into the actual venue where you would see the stage and the seating and the different types of seating, and what will be the kind of lighting and the impact and the branding and the collaterals and the merchandising and a million other items, which could actually physically demonstrate to a client without any imagination of what would be the physical delivery of the event. So there is a simple term in Hindi which they say, "Jo dikta hai, wo bikta hai." Events are all about convincing a client to say that this is exactly the idea as we see it visually, and this is exactly what you will get on the final day as a part of delivery. So when a client does a reckoning of the entire event, and he actually collaborates what you sold as an idea, and he collaborates it with the physical event, it builds trust. And when he sees that idea actually coming into play, and he sees the physical delivery exactly like what was sold to him in the boardroom, it reinforces trust in the agency. And this is where repeat purchases happen. So clients today continue to work with certain agencies on an ongoing basis, in spite of not having any contractual obligations, but they continue to come back to the agency, and that goodwill is created because of this kind of servicing of business that goes in. So creative visualization and creative content building is an important aspect of the event making process. Then we come to the physical aspect of production. So once the idea is sold, it is then needs to be implemented. But before it is implemented, production teams actually validate ideas. So what production does as a part of the planning process is that it takes the requirement from the client, it assesses it with the content and creative team, and it validates it. How does it validate it? It says whether the idea is practical, whether it can be implemented, whether it, along with the people who will attend, will physically fit into a particular venue. It also validates the quality that is expected by the client and the quantity that is expected by the client, and also manages the budgeting aspect of the business. So what it actually does is converts the idea into a physical thought, into a physical plan. It allocates departments to those plans, whether it be staging, lighting, AV, power, distribution, logistics, operations, artists, talent, housekeeping, sanitation, safety, security, licenses, permissions. The list goes on endlessly. And putting each of these parameters, putting further micro detailing to these parameters, putting together what would it take to deliver each of these departments, and putting a timeline schedule with a deadline which is available to them in the stipulated time to deliver the event. They actually validate saying this idea with this amount of time and this amount of money can or cannot be executed. Thus, they put a rationale to the business and allow the agency to pitch to the client and say, with this budget, with this time, with this kind of idea, we can do this. And thus, it gets the client to buy into the agency, buy into the idea, buy into the delivery mechanism, buy into the budget, and assign the agency to execute the event. Then the operation teams actually looks after the physical execution. So coordinating with vendors, coordinating with partners, coordinating with artists, ensuring everything goes into what is promised to the client in a physical form, and delivery of that into an actual event is what operations looks after. So operations is multidimensional. It could have logistics, it could have a creative operations team which looks after the content delivery, whether it's creating a video, whether it's creating music, whether it's creating collaterals, whether it's printing stationery, whether it's creating gifts and merchandising. So each physical type of event, whether it be social events, which has weddings, which has a more intense operations department, which looks after picking up guests from airports and taking them to the venue, and transporting them between venues, sometimes as a mandatory requirement. So these roles keep getting defined with event to event, and that's how they get delivered. Finally, of course, we have the administration and finance department, which primarily looks after what is needed post or during the event to recover money from the client and also pay out to vendors. So once contracts are signed by the client, they look after the legal frameworks, they look after the dealings between client's finance team and the agency's finance team to ensure that money and the funnel of money keeps flowing in so that outward payments can be made. Uh, they also look after the paperwork that is required to execute an event, so whether it be licensing from the government, permissions that are required, daily expenses that need to be monitored so that P&L or the profit and loss can be maintained in a proper way. They also look after the welfare of the staff and the people, so getting the insurance in place, getting the people to deliver in a comfortable environment without bothering about their wages or without bothering about the basic hygiene or safety or sanitation that needs to be taken into account when they're physically present on site to deliver projects. Simple aspects like staff welfare, which takes into account basic food, water, um, healthy supplies, so that they're all fresh and ready to execute the event, is what again admin teams takes care of. So this way, all these departments work in a general event management scenario, irrespective of the different types of events or irrespective of the discipline of the event. These departments fundamentally come together to actually deliver an event scenario. So uh, here what we're going to talk about is what are the career options in event. And now in this session, which will follow after this class, we will talk about the specialized careers in event. So while general event management has been around for more than 2.5 decades, specialized event career roles have today emerged in the business. So today, a lot of agencies are looking at specialists within the general event management scenario to deliver cutting edge solutions. So this could be your current skill sets that you have. So if you're a good prose writer, you could become a script writer. If you are a person who is majored in hotel management or done a cookery course or is a fashion stylist, you could become a stylist for a particular event, or you could become a chef or a food curator or a food stylist for a event, or you could specialize in banqueting events. So evolved careers have come into play in a big way in our business, because today more and more marketeers are looking at specialists to deliver. So if you know IT as a business, if you know how IT consumers react to products which are delivered by IT companies, if you know how FMCGs work and how distribution works in the consumer market, and how it is important to be seen on a shop floor by a consumer for an FMCG brand, then it becomes a specialized science which an FMCG company is looking from an activation company which does experiential. Weddings today. So again, weddings are general, but again, are you a destination wedding specialist who could actually go and deliver an event in Turkey? So again, in the MICE business of destination weddings, today people are looking at event managers who have a specialized skill sets of delivering a particular continent or even a particular country or even a particular city as part of events specialization. So this kind of niche build up has become an evolved part of events, and more companies are today looking at specialized roles in events. So therefore, in our next session that we will be talking about, we will be talking about what are the specialized careers, how they've evolved, and we will see a lot of examples of these specialized events being executed by different companies across India and across the globe. And we will also be talking about how these companies have delivered successful solutions in their niche markets. So thank you for joining in today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless.